G'day guys, welcome back to the channel at Play Any Patch. My name's Paul. So today what we thought we'd be talking about is the wonderful world of greenhouses and how to repair them. So if you're like me, you really wanted a greenhouse but you didn't want to spend $10,000 or $15,000 to get a really good one, what you ended up buying was a polycarb greenhouse, which is one of those aluminium type ones. You can see it in the background at the moment. Now, one of the biggest problems that you'll discover if you're like me, and usually if you're watching this video it means it's happened to you, is that what can happen with these greenhouses is that the polycarb in them in storms can actually blow out, and you can actually pop the panels out, and it leaves a lot of problems. So for example, this particular greenhouse that we're in currently, I have had, I think last year or the year before, it actually, the entire thing picked up and turned over onto its head, which destroyed several of the panels. So today what we want to do is, and if you're experiencing that and you're in midwinter, then you'll find that it won't just happen once, it'll happen multiple times. So in the video today is all about how you can actually stop that happening and fix it. Now unfortunately, if you're like me, you assumed when you bought these things that they were strong enough to withstand the weather, and of course they probably are not. Okay, so what we'll do initially is have a little bit of a look at some of the different types of polycarb, what I've done to this greenhouse, and then I'll take you for a quick tour around the greenhouse so you can see what I've done to fix the greenhouse so that I no longer have that problem. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is what I've got in my hand right now is two panels. Okay, so the way that most of these greenhouses are put together is that they'll have sort of an aluminium sort of frame like that, and they'll have little grooves along here, and the polycarb will sit in the grooves or something like that, for example. Now, when they're sitting in the grooves like that, when you have a really strong wind and the actual, you can see now because I'll do it on the screen, you'll see that it actually bows or something like that happens. Then what happens is your panels will come out of the little groove, and what will happen is that they of course will flex and break. And usually the biggest panels are normally on your roof of your greenhouse. So that's a bit of a problem. So what I actually had to do was I had to reinforce the entire greenhouse, and I replaced, where practical, the polycarb with a stronger polycarb. So I've got a sample of a spare piece I've got here, and hopefully you can see up on the camera nice and closely the difference in the size of the polycarb that's in there. Now, since I've replaced it with this polycarb and done the reinforcement, I haven't had a single problem. But there are a few little tricks to actually installing it and converting it so that you no longer have these issues. So the first thing that you need to do is with polycarb, and I'll just with polycarb, what happens is that it's two layers, almost like corrugated cardboard. And one of the issues is that if you get that stronger polycarb that's a little bit thicker, what you'll see is that it's very likely in a lot of cases that it won't fit into these grooves anymore, and that creates a problem because you can't use it in its current form. But there is a way to get around that to add additional strength. So the way that I've done it is that along the edges here, and you'll see, hopefully you can see that closely on the camera, along the edges along here you have the top layer and the bottom layer of the polycarb. So you can see that, if you can see from the end, the top and the bottom area, hopefully you can see that. I'm not sure how well it's going to come out in the camera. And the problem is that if we take our little piece here, it's not going to fit, and we're going to have this overhang here, and that's okay. So what I've actually done is slit with a Stanley knife or a sharp knife down between the two the top piece and the bottom piece, right down. What I've done is slit down the side and then pushed one half of it through the groove, and the other half is sat on top. And so as a modification, I can actually get them the panels to fit if I do that and then slot them into place. Now, some of them are really stiff. I actually had to get a hammer to get some of them in, but once they're in, they're really strong, and obviously I haven't had a subsequent issue. But I also did a couple of extra things to reinforce the greenhouse which you can do, because as I said, I really didn't want to have to go through the process that I had just been in a greenhouse on its roof, having to reconstruct it, and inevitably in poor weather, because it all usually happens in winter. So when I did it, I kind of did it for keeps, so that I wouldn't have another problem again. Now, I didn't replace every single panel, so I do have the odd panel of the older material that gets damaged and I have to replace it, and that's just the nature of this product. But what I've done here definitely has fixed the problem. Okay, so we're here in the greenhouse, and what you're looking at, and we'll just do a quick pan around, is what my greenhouse looks like currently. And you'll see that the lower edges, I kind of went the full hog, and the lower panels are actually replaced with timber, which you don't have to do, but I chose to do it because I had so many damaged panel when this thing turned up on its end, and I'll show you what we did outside in a second. Now, for the roof panels, which are the longest panels in the greenhouse, which for most panels means that because of that, because it's long, it can bow. So we needed to make sure we stopped that. So the way that I did it was that I popped the greenhouse. I basically put a piece of timber, an additional piece of timber on the outside of the greenhouse, and then one on the inside. And so you'll see here, this is the inside where basically they've been bolted together. Now it's a little bit tricky to do it, but the easiest way to do it is essentially take your panels, put them in position, and then go along and drill from the outside through just the piece of timber that's outside the greenhouse. And once you've done that, you can then remove the external panels, and you can take the inner panel, or the inner pieces, and you can place them on top of the line them up and replace them on top of the outer piece, and then basically line them up and run a drill straight through them so that you have your holes perfectly lined up, and then you can bring it back. And basically what I did was bring it back and put bolts through. So this greenhouse is literally not going anywhere at all, and that's a really sort of a bit of a fix. It will cost you a bit to do, but honestly, if you want your greenhouse to survive, that's absolutely what you need to do. The second thing we did for the greenhouse is, as you can see, we replaced each one of the lower panels, and I painted it with marine ply, and all I did was went down to the local hardware store with the measurements, and they cut them for me, and I just slotted them straight in one after another and then painted it. So it wasn't a really big job. But to stop this greenhouse ever rolling over again, what I did, which is that I actually bolted the greenhouse in to a support below the greenhouse in each corner. Now, if you don't have timber panels, because you can see I've screwed straight through the timber panels, obviously what you have to do is screw through the aluminium base. But basically that has definitely fixed the problem once and for all. Now, so that's our greenhouse in a nutshell. Not the best construction you've ever seen in your life, but is a functional greenhouse now rather than something that's constantly needing to be repaired. Now, I hope you found the video useful. I hope you're able to repair your own greenhouse and get some good results. And if you enjoyed the video, please click the subscribe button. Visit us at planyourpatch.com. We also have an article on exactly this, where I can show you some photos of the greenhouse, the damage that had happened to the greenhouse when this occurred to me, which I'll add in the link below. And other than that, have a great day, and I hope your greenhouse goes fantastically well.